If illness has left you feeling like the future has disappeared, in this episode you'll discover why reconnecting with even a small sense of purpose can change how your body responds to disease. You've been told it's incurable, but here at Renegade Remission, we believe in rewriting the story. If you're facing a terminal or chronic illness, you are not alone. I'm Eleni Welch, certified nutritionist, and each week I share healing strategies and remission stories to help you take control of your health, feel better, and rediscover hope. Welcome back to Renegade Remission. This episode explores something surprising. Purpose itself appears to change inflammation, immune signaling, and the body's ability to repair. Today we'll explore the biology behind that connection and how even small moments of meaning can influence the way the body prepares for the future. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how having a sense of purpose measurably influences immune signaling, inflammation, and disease outcomes. You'll learn why future orientation and meaning change nervous system regulation and energy metabolism in ways that support healing capacity. And you'll hear a real cancer survivor story where rediscovering purpose became a turning point that coincided with unexpected disease stabilization. Stay until the end because I'll walk you through a practical purpose activation framework, creating small, biologically meaningful anchors that give your body a reason to keep moving forward. When people are diagnosed with serious illness, something subtle but profound often happens long before any physical change appears. The future disappears. Plans become tentative. Conversations shift into the present tense, and the horizon shortens. This is a natural response to uncertainty and fear. But research increasingly suggests that when the brain loses its sense of future orientation, when it stops anticipating meaningful experiences ahead, the body begins operating differently at a biological level. Purpose is not just a psychological idea, it's actually a physiological state. It influences how the nervous system regulates stress, how the immune system prioritizes repair, how energy is allocated inside cells, and even how inflammatory genes are expressed. This doesn't necessarily mean that having purpose can cure disease, but it does mean that having something to live for sends signals throughout the body that alter the terrain in which disease unfolds. Before we dive into the science surrounding this, I want to begin with a real story that illustrates how rediscovering purpose can become a turning point in healing. This is a story from author Salika Jaoud in her memoir, Between Two Kingdoms, a Memoir of Life Interrupted. Writer Salika Jaoud was in her early 20s when she began experiencing persistent fatigue, itching, and unexplained bruising. At the time, she was living in Paris and working towards a career in journalism. When her symptoms worsened, she returned to the United States for medical testing. Soon afterwards, she received a diagnosis of acute myeloid leukemia, an aggressive blood cancer. Her doctors told her that survival would depend on intensive treatment. She underwent months of chemotherapy and eventually a bone marrow transplant. During this period of treatment, Jaoud spent long stretches in the hospital, often isolated because of the severe immune suppression caused by the chemotherapy. In her memoir, she describes how illness did more than disrupt her physical health. It also disrupted her sense of identity and the future she had imagined for herself. Before her diagnosis, she had been focused on building a career as a writer and journalist. During treatment, those plans felt distant and uncertain. Much of her energy was devoted simply to surviving the next round of chemotherapy or the next hospital stay. While still undergoing treatment, Jaoud began writing about her experience with cancer in a column for the New York Times called Life Interrupted. Through this writing, she started sharing the realities of living with serious illness and connecting with other patients and survivors who wrote to her in response. The act of writing and communication with others facing illness gradually became an important source of meaning during a period when much of her life felt out of her control. She describes how the column helped restore a sense of purpose at a time where her identity had been reduced largely to that of a cancer patient. Years after her treatment ended, Jaoud continued exploring what it meant to rebuild a life after serious illness. In Between Two Kingdoms, she describes embarking on a cross-country journey across the United States, meeting many of the people who had written to her during her illness and hearing their own stories of survival and recovery. Throughout her memoir, she reflects on how illness changed her relationship with time, identity, and purpose. The process of writing, connecting with others, and sharing stories became a way of creating meaning during and after cancer. Stories like Salika Jaoud's raise an important question. How could something as intangible as meaning or purpose influence the course of illness? Over the past several decades, researchers studying stress physiology, psychoneuroimmunology, and behavioral medicine have begun exploring that exact question. What they've discovered is that purpose is not simply a motivational idea. It has measurable effects on biological systems that influence inflammation, immune coordination, stress hormone regulation, and even gene expression. When the brain perceives that life still contains meaningful goals or relationships ahead, the nervous system behaves differently. Energy allocation changes, stress signaling stabilizes, and the body becomes less locked in survival physiology and more capable of repair. To understand why that happens, we need to look at what researchers have discovered about how purpose influences the biology of healing. In research settings, purpose is defined as a stable sense that one's life has direction, meaning, and forward orientation. And when researchers measure it carefully, they repeatedly find that purpose has measurable physiological signatures. Let's examine what that actually means. One of the most compelling lines of research comes from studies examining the conserved transcriptional response to adversity, CTRA, a pattern of gene expression activated during chronic stress. When CTRA is elevated, the body shows increased expression of pro-inflammatory genes and decreased expression of antiviral and antibody-related genes. This pattern is associated with higher disease vulnerability across cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disorders, cancer progression, and metabolic dysfunction. In studies led by Stephen Cole and colleagues, individuals reporting higher levels of purpose and meaning showed significantly reduced activation of this pro-inflammatory gene expression pattern, even when controlling for depression and socioeconomic status. This does not mean that purpose erases inflammation, but it suggests that purpose shifts immune programming away from chronic stress signaling and towards more balanced immune function. Large longitudinal population studies have found that individuals reporting a strong sense of purpose have significantly lower risk of all-cause mortality over follow-up periods ranging from 5 to 14 years. In a widely cited study of over 6,000 adults, those in the highest purpose quartile had approximately a 15 to 20% lower risk of death during follow-up compared to those with the lowest sense of purpose, even after adjusting for baseline health conditions, age, income, and depressive symptoms. This association persists even when controlling for major confounders. So purpose appears to be biologically and physiologically protective. Purpose also stabilizes our stress hormone rhythms. Chronic illness often disrupts cortisol patterns. Instead of rising in the morning and falling at night, cortisol rhythms can flatten or invert, a pattern associated with fatigue, immune dysregulation, and worse health outcomes. Studies examining psychological well-being and purpose show that individuals with higher purpose scores demonstrate more stable diurnal cortisol slopes, meaning their stress hormone rhythm is better regulated. These stable cortisol rhythms are associated with reduced inflammatory signaling, improved sleep quality, and better immune surveillance. So purpose appears to buffer the body against chronic stress dysregulation. Additionally, purpose enhances cardiovascular and autonomic regulation. Purpose has been linked to improved heart rate variability, which is a measure of autonomic nervous system flexibility. Heart rate variability, or HRV, indicates stronger parasympathetic vagal tone, which is associated with lower inflammation, better immune precision, improved metabolic regulation, and greater stress resilience. When individuals report feeling that their life has direction, their autonomic nervous system appears more adaptable and less locked into survival or fight or flight physiology. Purpose also changes behavior in biologically meaningful ways. While the direct physiological findings are compelling, one of the strongest mechanisms may be the behavioral cascades that result. People with higher purpose scores are consistently more likely to adhere to medical treatment and lifestyle changes, engage in physical movement, maintain social connection, seek preventative care, and reduce high-risk behaviors. Each of these behaviors independently reduces inflammatory burden and improves immune regulation. Purpose also affects our energy allocation. From an evolutionary biology perspective, organisms invest energy in survival when there is a reason to do so. When future orientation collapses, withdrawal behaviors increase, energy conservation mechanisms dominate, movement decreases, and social interaction reduces. But when purpose is present, even subtly, then motivation-linked dopamine pathways activate, movement increases, social connection increases, and behavior withdrawal decreases. This shift in energy allocation alters our inflammatory load and metabolic signaling over time. So here's what this means for you. Purpose is not pressure to find your grand mission in life. It is not about productivity or constant passion, and it's certainly not meant to make you feel as though you're not trying hard enough. Purpose is simply the feeling that something ahead of you matters, and when the brain believes that tomorrow has meaning, the body behaves differently today. Here are some practical action steps you can take. One of the simplest ways to activate future-oriented biology is to place something meaningful on your calendar. It doesn't need to be big. It could be scheduling a phone call with someone you care about next week, planning to attend a support group, or choosing a small activity you're looking forward to. When the brain sees something meaningful in the future, it begins orienting the body towards tomorrow instead of towards withdrawal. The next thing you can do is think in terms of roles rather than life missions. When people hear the word purpose, they often think they're supposed to discover some huge calling. But purpose can simply be a role you occupy in someone's life or your own. You might be a listener, a mentor, a learner, a friend who checks in on others. Roles create a continuity of identity, and identity helps stabilize the nervous system during illness. The third thing you can do is practice micro-contribution. Many survivors describe a powerful shift when they began contributing to society again, even in small ways. That contribution might be sending a message of encouragement to someone else, sharing something you've learned in your own health journey, or simply being present for another person. Contribution activates reward circuits in the brain associated with meaning, motivation, and resilience. The fourth thing you can do is borrow purpose from relationships. Sometimes during difficult phases of illness, it's hard to feel personal purpose. In those moments, it can help to orient towards someone or something outside yourself. You might think about someone you care deeply about, a cause that matters to you, or even a small group of people whose lives you touch simply by being present. Reminding the brain that you still belong in the story of other people's lives can create powerful biological signals of connection and meaning. And the last thing you can do is notice one thing that connects you to tomorrow. It might be a conversation, a plan you made, something you're looking forward to. When the brain repeatedly notices evidence that the future still contains meaning, it begins reinforcing those neural pathways, and over time, that sense of orientation towards the future can influence the biology of healing. Purpose can change the way your body prepares for the future. It shifts energy allocation, immune signaling, and emotional physiology in ways that make healing more possible. And sometimes that gentle lean towards tomorrow can become one of the most powerful biological signals your body can receive. In upcoming episodes, we'll continue to discuss purpose, mindset, and the lifestyle and nutrition changes that influence disease progression. So stay tuned for those episodes, and as always, go be renegades.